What does the OM-3 have that other mirrorless cameras simply cannot compete with? Two things, a micro four thirds sensor and this right here, the computational photography button. Because the technology that OM system is able to harness around this beautiful sensor is nothing short of spectacular. Here's why, play tape. So I would call the OM-3 the perfect everyday camera, one that you reach for in the morning and throw into your camera bag, ready for any fleeting moments that might be worthy of capturing and freezing in time. Distinguished gentleman in a trilby here, gingerly descending the stairs. So the two lenses I'll be using alongside the OM-3 today is the 45mm and the 25mm primes, both with an enviable f1.2 aperture. Now, most camera owners can only dream of acquiring such enormous f-stops like f1.2 because they're usually incredibly expensive and heavy. But with micro four thirds, f1.2 is much more obtainable and compact. So I found this really oldie worldy pub on the South Bank here, and the door to the pub is open, which is creating a really nice frame for people walking through the shots. Plus we get some reflections in the window as well. Street photography, it's about disappearing, about being present without being noticed. And that's where the OM-3 quietly shines. The design feels borrowed from another time. Classic lines, restrained elegance, nothing loud. It doesn't demand attention, it earns trust. And on the streets of London, that kind of matters. So I have reviewed this camera on the channel before, so I don't necessarily want to repeat myself, but rather show you the everyday uses in real world scenarios. Things like high-speed sequential shooting up to 120 frames per second, and computational high resolution up to 80 megapixels. These things alone are reason enough to get your hands on the OM-3. This is one of the prettiest pubs in the whole of London, just off Covent Garden. Once the scene had quietened down, I managed to capture a clean image of a solitary cyclist. So with the OM-3, you also get great color straight out of camera, which is huge for street photography where you don't want to spend hours editing. And that's where this little creative dial on the front of the camera comes into play. Monochrome photography has always been extremely popular with street photographers. Leica even have a dedicated monochrome camera which only shoots in black and white. Not something I would personally ever go for, but having a monochrome function on the OM-3, that's definitely something that appeals to me. So that's Mono 1, Mono 2 I love. Mono 3 is a little bit more faded. So let's go with Mono 2. Love that sort of deep, rich contrast. This classic film effect image came straight out of camera with no editing required. So I'm at 40th of a second to create some subtle motion blur in any walkers crossing the scene. Reflection shots are a classic form of urban expression in street photography. The wet surfaces can provide very good contrast and deep blacks. They can open up a world of creative possibilities, just like this upside down puddle image. shot. Just gotta wait for the right opportunity. So we're going for that fast continuous electronic shutter. So street photography in the rain can be challenging, yes, but the rewards can be enormous. When you have a camera like the OM-3 with its weather protection and that IP53 rating, it gives you the confidence that capturing these types of shots in the rain is not going to jeopardize the integrity of the technology inside. So if you're not familiar with ND filters, what this is kind of like sunglasses for your camera lens. They enable you to reduce the shutter speed in order to get those long exposures and those motion blur effects. Well, with the OM-3, we have no need for these because it has live ND. Live ND shooting, we'll switch that on, and then we can choose from ND2 all the way up to 64. I'm going to plump for ND32. We're going with an exposure of 1.3 seconds and f13 ISO 200, and you can actually see how much the screen is kind of blurring with the motion blur effects, but then you sort of lock on. The OM-3 has an incredible in-body stabilization system with up to 6.5 stops EV, extending up to 7.5 stops when used with Sync IS lenses. So how this live ND filter works, I believe, is by the camera capturing multiple frames extremely quickly and then are combined and averaged out by the processor. Static areas of the scene stay sharp in the frame while moving objects blur naturally, just like any physical neutral density filter. Extremely effective for slow moving subjects like flowing water, clouds and people. So even at a 2-second exposure here, I can take advantage of the internal image stabilization and live ND together to create these handheld images with beautiful silky smooth motion. So I'm going to go on to sequential burst mode for this shot, and we'll go 50 frames per second, which is insane. So going back to my original question, what does this camera have that other mirrorless cameras simply cannot compete with? Well, the smaller micro four thirds sensor frees up some of the camera's processor to prioritize performance, speed, and computational features rather than just pixel count alone. Sequential shooting up to 50 frames per second in full subject detection autofocus in 14-bit RAW. That's blistering performance, not to mention 120 frames per second. These kind of specs are normally reserved for those higher end sports cameras. I mean, we have focus stacking. How about this? Graduated ND filters. This darkens the exposure area smoothly across the plane of the white lines, extending down or angling towards the diagonals as desired. Multiple frames with varying exposures will be blended together to control highlights and shadows. And of course, one of the jewels in the crown is this CP button on the back here, which engages a whole host of computational features like high-res photography. And it transforms these 20.4 megapixel resolution images into either 50 megapixels handheld, or when using a tripod, 80 megapixels. Watch this. So if we press and hold the CP button and use the top dial to cycle through, we can see all of our computational features. There's the live NDs, handheld high res, and the high res tripod shot. And using a 2-second timer, let's just take a picture. The size comparison from 20.4 megapixels to 80 megapixels is clearly an advantage. Zooming in up close, you can see the quality at the pixel level. The everyday street camera suddenly becomes a fully fledged landscape camera, so versatile. Autofocus is fast and reliable, so you're ready when those moments happen, not after they're gone. On the streets, of course, you're more likely to be using that AI face detection autofocus, but there are plenty of other subjects to choose from, like birds, trains, planes, cars. Subject detection. Let's go to bird. And let's try and get this shot of the bird. Tracking the eye of this manky old pigeon. OM System are well known for their incredible wildlife photography capabilities with fast and reliable autofocusing. With only one eye visible on this swan, the AI subject detection still manages to know what to track. So final thoughts, simply put, there is no other camera available on the market right now with this many unique features and tools for the everyday photographer. It really is like the Swiss Army knife of cameras, and an absolutely beautiful one to boot. Wearing this camera around your neck feels more like a fashion statement rather than a piece of photography equipment. An elegant masterpiece with the charm and good looks of rangefinders from the middle of last century, but on the inside, has a brain of the future. So when you combine classic looks, modern performance, and a truly discreet shooting experience, the OM-3 feels like it's been purpose-built for the streets.